Welcome back to my kitchen. Today's video is all about how to use a scale and the importance of why we use a scale in baking. As you've heard me say before, this is the #1 thing you can do to level up your gluten-free baking, to have consistent results. It will instantly improve your baking results, and it's actually quite easy to use, and once you get used to it, I think baking with a scale is faster, cleaner, neater. I can't say enough of good things about it. There is a reason why all professional pastry chefs bake by weight, and again, that is because it's going to give you better results, and in the long run, it's faster and will save you money. So let's get started. First, what I want to talk about is the reason why baking with the scale makes such a big difference, especially when we're converting recipes from a standard recipe to a gluten-free recipe. When you take into account flour, which is often the main ingredient, there's so many variables. So first of all, it's how you pack your cup. If you are measuring with a cup, how do you pack your cup? Are you just scooping it out of the bag and dumping it in the recipe? Are you fluffing it all up or sifting it into the cup and then leveling it off, which if you're using a cup is the best way to do it. I will demonstrate a close-up and show you the difference in those two is massive. So how are you scooping? But then the other question is, whoever originally wrote the recipe, how were they scooping? So you have that variable. And then what type of flour? Different brands of all-purpose regular flour vary slightly, and so do different brands of gluten-free flour as to what a cup of flour weighs. But if we are just going by weight for the actual recipe, so recipes written by weight to begin with are gonna always be the absolute best and most standard. But if you take a traditional recipe that's written in cups and convert it into weight, there are standard measurements for what things weigh, and you will again get a better result than if you are just measuring using cups, because there's way too many variables there, and it's really easy to have your amounts be off pretty considerably, which lends, usually people's weights are over, so it's gonna lead to drier results, grittier results. And there's a few other tips, things you can do that will help with grittiness, which is, again, you hear me talk about often, is rest your batter. So that's my #2 tip after using a scale is with gluten-free baking, is to always rest your batters before you bake them. That helps with the grittiness. But today we're here to talk about scales. So for the next portion of this video, I'm gonna show you really just a close-up so you can see what's going on with my scale, and I'll talk through showing you the difference of it makes in packing your cup, and then actually just how to use a scale. There is a link with this video to my Amazon list where you can find this scale, which is the one that I have been using. I like this scale, and I only recommend it because I've been using it for about the last 5 years, and it's still going strong. It's still very accurate when I test it against other scales, and it's moderately priced. This one usually is between $30 and $40 on Amazon. You can find less expensive ones. You can find much more expensive ones. Buy whatever scale you like and you want to use, but I just know that this one is durable, lasts a long time. I use it daily, and it's still quite accurate. So let's get to the close-up and show you a little bit more about why this is so important and how we go about doing it. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna do with your scale, this scale has all this stuff written on it, just because this also functions as a nutrition scale. So if you count macros, you're interested in nutrition profiles, you can actually use this scale for that as well, but you don't need to use any of those functions at all for baking. So just if you're wondering why this scale has the things written on it. So the first thing we do when we're using a scale, obviously, is we're just gonna hit the power button and turn it on. It's gonna read 0, so if I just wanted to weigh anything, an apple or something, you just put it on, it's gonna tell me the weight. Right now it is set to ounces, which most scales default to, at least here in the US. We're gonna switch that. There's just a button here, scale units. We're gonna switch it to grams, because grams are more accurate because they're a smaller unit of measurement, so they're much more precise, which is what we want for baking. So this is weighing the weight of the bowl, 542 grams. If I'm gonna weigh ingredients in here, I don't want to account for the weight of the bowl, so we use this button called tare. On some scales it will say 0. If you hit that button, it takes away the weight of the bowl. Now anything I weigh into that is going to give me the exact weight that I want. Personally, I am a fan of weighing each ingredient separately into its own container. This is something that pastry chefs do. It helps you avoid mistakes by losing count, or if the scale shuts off halfway through and you have a whole bunch of ingredients in the bowl, then you lose all of those ingredients because you're not sure if you're accurate. So by weighing everything separately into separate containers, again, it's safety. Should you decide you want to weigh things into the same bowl, you just need to remember that you're gonna have to zero it between each ingredient. But again, I don't really recommend doing it that way. So let's get started. I have my scale here zeroed out. So now I'm gonna weigh out a cup of flour, and I'm going to show you what the difference, what happens here. So I have my bag of flour. I'm just gonna move this over so you can see how I scoop. So here's my bag of flour. If I just reach in and scoop, my flour and level it off. And then we're gonna put this on the scale. Let's see what it weighs. So there's our scale, it's on 0. I'm gonna dump that in. 180 grams. Okay, so that's what happens if we just scoop. So that might be how you scoop, but what if it's not how the person that wrote the recipe scoops? Now, if I gently spoon my flour in to my cup as I go, this is the preferred way. If you do have to use a measuring cup for some reason, you always want to scoop and fluff. But so say I do that, and then I level off the top to make sure I have an even cup, right? Let's zero this out. Now let's see what this weighs. That's 136, which is much more accurate. So when we're using gluten-free flour, there is a bit of a range brand to brand. It's usually anywhere from 125 to 140. I have found with all recipes, when I'm converting a recipe, I average everything. I always go by 130 grams of gluten-free flour per cup of flour in any recipe, and that works. It's got just enough leeway, 5 or 10 grams on either side. It's not gonna make a big difference. 99.9% of the time, if you're converting a recipe from cups to grams, use the standard measurement of 130 grams for each cup of gluten-free flour. So you can see here, that was a difference of 50 grams. That is huge. That is more than a quarter cup of flour. So of course your cake would be dry, your cookies would be dry. Things are not gonna come out the way that they should. So again, I highly recommend using a scale, and it's easy as that. So if I was gonna throw all caution to the wind and be crazy and wanted to put another ingredient on top of that, if I hit 0, it takes away the weight of everything in the bowl. The next thing I weigh would only give me the weight of, again, that next ingredient. But again, I cannot stress enough, personally, I would prefer to take that off, put another container on, weigh each ingredient separately, and then put them all together for your recipe. I hope you find this video useful. And again, there's links below to where you can find this scale that I like. But again, any digital scale will work. I hope you get a scale, and I hope that you have wonderful results with it and love it as much as I do.